Hey guys, Chris with Nichols Retirement Empire. Today we're going to talk about what you can do to have the best possible relationship with your child's teacher that will help your child learn the most that they can in their classroom. So let's look at that and some things that you can do as a parent that will help you, and there are some things that you can do that can really help you out. One thing that I recommend, and as a teacher this went a long way with me. One of the first things you should do is, and there's nothing wrong with going and meeting the teacher on open house and things like that, but you have to understand in open house there's going to be hundreds of people there. You meeting that teacher and having any kind of meaningful conversation is probably not going to happen during open house. So one of the best things to do is wait a few days or a week maybe, and then follow up and contact that teacher. And I would do it in writing, and there's a reason why. I'll explain that later. But follow up in writing with that teacher, and I would make sure that I expressed to them that I supported them fully. I would make this as positive a contact as I could make in every way. I would go through and I would talk about, how I felt about education, how I felt about teachers, brag on them in any kind of way you can, because everybody likes to be talked about, in a good manner. Everybody likes to be bragged on, things like that. It's going to make them feel good. But you need to contact them, talk about how much you appreciate them, things like that. And then I would also follow up with, now here's some things I want you to know about my child, and I would not focus on the weaknesses. I would focus on their strengths. And, I would use any kind of information that I had from the year before. For example, my son raised his standardized test score in reading 50 points last year. He made all A's and B's for the first time. He had never made A's and B's before. He raised his math grade. I would tell them all this kind of information, and you're like, well, why do I need to tell? The big thing with that is you're letting the teacher know that you are on top of your child's education. You know what their strengths are. You know how they've grown. And then you could kind of express, and so this year I expect my child to do better. I expect, and tell what your expectations are of your child. And now there's nothing wrong with telling their weaknesses or telling some, like let's say they got some medical issue that the teacher needs to know about, or that needs to be addressed. Talk about that. There's nothing wrong with talking about those things, but the main focus of this contact needs to be positive and needs to be everything positive about your child and about that teacher. Now, there's a good reason for doing that, and I'll tell you that. Yeah, it's good to make that first positive contact, because a lot of teachers, they don't like to contact parents because they have had a lot of negative experiences with that. And you can understand why. If the first contact I make with a parent is because the son has acted out in class or he's gotten in trouble in class, and you're starting off the first time you've really talked with each other and the first time you've had any experience with each other in a negative way. And now you're starting it off in a way where you're putting out your expectations, and the teacher, 90% of the time, teachers in that kind of situation are going to be so glad they heard from you, are going to be so happy that they had somebody, speak to them in a positive way and contact them and let them know that they were on their side. That's going to go a long way with that teacher. And so that's why that's a really good thing to do. The other thing too is I would let the teacher know, and I would let my child know that, one of the things that I'm going to expect from them is that they are responsible. The child is responsible for their education. They are responsible for their grade. They are responsible for their behavior. And I always made sure that my daughters understood that I was not going to accept an excuse for poor behavior, or I was not going to accept an excuse for them not to perform in a class the way they're capable of. They weren't going to come home and tell me, well, because this other kid I couldn't make a good grade. They weren't going to come home and tell me, well, the teacher is not, the teacher won't listen to me. I wouldn't listen to that. I never wanted my child to have an excuse to, blame it on somebody else. I always brought it back to them. Well, the teacher, well, you need to raise your hand and you need to talk to the teacher. Well, the teacher, well, you need to stay after class and you need to ask the teacher, the other kids won't stop. Well, you need to ask the teacher if you can change seats. Now, I wanted them to advocate for themselves as much as they could and to be responsible as much as they could. So that's one of the things I would let the teacher know in that original contact with them, is that was my expectation for my child, that they are responsible and I'm not going to accept excuses for my child for behavior or for grades. Now, again, that will go a long way with the teacher. Now, there may be situations, where there needs to be more contact made later. But in most situations, this original contact, the teacher's going to be so happy to hear it. The teacher's going to be so, like I said, so glad to hear from you. They're not going to worry about contacting you in the future. They may let you know things that they may not have contacted other parents about because they didn't want the hassle. But they feel like with you they can, that they could communicate with you. So you have opened up a channel of communication there. You've opened up a channel of trust. Also, you've shown, that you're going to speak to them in a way that's positive. A lot of people, they want to go into a situation like the kid makes a bad grade and they want to go in guns blazing, and my son's never failed, and they're all mad and they're blaming everything on the teacher and everything's negative. And you're not going to get, the response for that you would like, and you're not going to get the result for that you would like. For one, your child's going to see the way you're behaving and how you're blaming everything on the teacher, and that's going to give them an out the rest of the time that they're in their class, that it's the teacher's fault, it's not my fault. So I was always very careful not to ever blame anything on the teacher or let my children blame anything on the teacher. Now, there were times when it may have been the teacher's fault, and I'll tell you how to handle that here in a little bit, but I never let my child know that. But if there is a situation where you need to contact the teacher, these are the things I would recommend with that. Number one, when I contacted them, I would have specific questions ready to ask, because if it's grades and I start talking to the teacher, I want the teacher to be able to tell me some detail about what's going on. The teacher ought to be able to tell me, here's exactly what we're going over. Here's exactly the problem that your son or daughter's having. They have shown me in quizzes that they took before that they could do this, but in this quiz, they, for some reason did not do as well. Maybe they did. The teacher should be able to give you some kind of recommendations to remedy the situation. I have tutoring on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Why don't you let them stay after school and I can help them work with this? Or the teacher may say, hey, I know a website that you guys can look at, on the computer that'll help them practice. Now, once you've made that second contact with them, again, you need to document that. You need to document what got said. You need to document what the teacher told you, and whatever the teacher told you when you ask what we can do to help, do it. And document that you did it, and document the result of it. If they said, practice on this website, put down, we practiced every day for 3 weeks, for 10 minutes, and, my son made a better grade every time. Document what happened. Because there may be situations where the teacher maybe is not holding up their end of the situation, and they're not doing their what they said they were going to do. So I would make sure anytime if I have in mind that there might be some kind of issue that I'm keeping track of it. Again, not to get anybody in trouble, but if I'm going to hold my child accountable, then I want to make sure, that I hold myself accountable, and that I hold, the other adults in the situation, it's the teacher, accountable as well. But I want to do that in a reasonable way. What a lot of people do is a situation will occur, and they don't pay attention to their child's grades, and then they find out 9 weeks later they're failing, and then they get all mad, or something happens at school, and before they even check with the school to see what happened, they'll get on Facebook or Instagram or something and just blast the teacher and call the teacher names and all this kind of stuff. And when you do things like that, when you go down to the school and you don't even try to talk to the teacher, you immediately go to the principal and try to scream and holler and make a big scene, all that's going to do is affect your child in a negative way. They're not going to learn the rest of the year. That teacher's not going to get fired. The chances of that teacher, of your child's teacher, even if they're doing a poor job, the chances of them getting fired and replaced with a better teacher that year are practically zero. Teachers have job protection. They have, a right to remediate if their performance is not very good. And those things don't just happen in the middle of the year. You don't just see them taken out of the classroom and things like that unless it's just egregious, unless there is something really, really bad going on. But you're not going to get the teacher fired. Getting together with all the other parents and comparing notes and sending emails to the principal and the administrators probably already know what the situations are in that class. You're not telling them anything they don't know. What your job is to get the best experience you can for your child. And if you can maintain the best relationship you can with that teacher and make sure that your child understands that it is their responsibility to act right, it's their responsibility to do the best they can with their grades, that's what you need to focus on. There were situations with my children where they were in classes where I had been an administrator and I knew that the teacher that they had was not the best teacher and had a hard time with classroom management, and I had to tell them up front, listen, in this classroom, this is what's going to happen. I've seen it happen, and I've had to address it with this teacher, and you're responsible for your grades. You're responsible for the way you act. Again, I was not going to accept any excuse from them wrong where you feel the teacher's not doing their job. So let's talk about how to handle that. Now, let's say that I have, I've established that good relationship at the beginning. I followed through. If there was a situation where my child, wasn't doing very well, I did what the teacher asked me to do. I documented everything that happened, and let's say I have got the feeling or I've got the indication maybe the teacher's not doing their part. Maybe the teacher told me that they were going to help my son or daughter after school and they didn't do that, or maybe the teacher said, well, we're going to start doing this in class, and they didn't start doing that. And I have tried, I've contacted them, I've done everything I can with them. Then there may be a situation where it's like, I need to talk to an administrator. Now, here's the good thing about what you have done up to this point. Up to this point, you've acted in a reasonable way at all times. You have documented everything that you have done as a parent on your side to help your child. You've not accepted excuses from your child from the way they have acted or the performance that they have made. You have not, gone in and given the teacher a hard time or been unreasonable in any kind of way. So you can go in when you do talk to an administrator, whether it's on the phone or face-to-face, and you have all this documentation, and you can say, listen, here's what all the facts are. The administrator already knows what's happening. And, you're just giving them, information that they need to be able to correct the teacher. Administrators have other things to do. They have other teachers they have to, deal with, other kids they have to deal with, so the administrator wants it fixed. If it's a problem that the teacher, with the teacher, the administrator wants it addressed and fixed. So, they're on your side. They want your child to learn. But again, you don't want to go into a situation where you're creating an adversarial relationship with a teacher. You're creating an adversarial relationship with the administration because that's not going to get you what you want. And, ultimately, I hope what it is that you want is that your child learns. And, sometimes, you may not have the absolute ideal situation with a teacher, but your child can still learn in that classroom. Your child can still behave, and you want to get the best you can out of it. And going in and saying stuff about them on Facebook, stuff like that is not going to get what you want. So, hopefully that'll be something that can help you. If you have, specific questions, I'll be glad to answer those. Obviously, again, the vast majority of the time, you're not going to have, problems. Most people don't have problems at school. Their kids don't have problems with grades, things like that. But sometimes that's going to happen. I mean, I had situations with my kids where I had to, talk with the teachers and, work things out with the teachers, even with me as an administrator and me as a teacher. So I know that happens because your kid has a lot of different teachers over all the years that they go to school. So chances are you're not going to have just a perfect teacher every year. And chances are your kid's not going to be perfect every year. So hopefully that'll be something that can help you, and at least it'll help you establish that good relationship, and the teachers will appreciate it.